Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting of March 3rd, 2026. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Coast Salish people, specifically the Shiano First Nation, on whose territory this district and chosen building stands, and our neighbors, the Sook Nation. We recognize and respect our First Nation governments, all of whom have a long-standing relationship with the land and the sea waters that continue to this day. Thank you. So council, before you, we have an agenda. We've got a pink item to add to item number 12. Any other additions or amendments? No, if I could have a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to presentations. We're fortunate this evening to have two presentations. The first presentation is by Sylvia Cercero and Michelle Banchou Orozco, Director of Research and Data Analysis, the Alliance to End Homelessness Community Plan 2025 to 2030. Sylvia, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. As the Mayor said, I'm Sylvia Cercero. I'm the CEO of the Alliance to End Homelessness in the Capital Region. And this is my colleague, Michelle Banchou Orozco, who is our Director of Research and Data Analysis. The presentation that I sent to you is the long version, but I'm going to abridge because I can stay here all evening, and I'm sure you don't want that from us. So thank you again for having us. As you probably all know, Marie-Thérèse is a member of our board of directors appointed by the CRD, and we have continued conversation and collaboration about all the things that have to do with the Alliance. The Alliance to End Homelessness started in 2007 with the then Mayor of Victoria's task force to look into the coordination and the insurances that the homelessness serving sector was working with one another, and the Alliance emerged as the body that is a backbone organization that carries mainly an advocacy mandate for the Capital Region District, that is the 13 municipalities and the 3 electoral areas. And my apologies, I'm just ending a cold, so you may hear my nasally self. One of the mandates of the Alliance is to carry out consultation with our community at large and to develop the community plan for 2025-2030. This community plan, unlike the last one was called Community Plan to End Homelessness. We are now talking about the community plan to achieve functional zero homelessness, which is, I will explain in a minute. So here we go. Whoop. What am I pointing at? There we go. So functional zero homelessness by 2030 means that the experiences of homelessness are rare, brief, and non-recurring. So what we're saying basically is that unfortunately, they may be experiences of homelessness, but that will not happen frequently. And that when it does, it is a brief stay in homelessness, meaning that there are enough wraparounds for the person to exit homelessness rapidly, and that the experience is non-recurring. So the person does not return to homelessness ever again. The guiding principles of this community plan are they're based on being person-centered, housing as a human right, nothing about us without us. That means that we have at the Alliance a lived experience council that is composed of individuals with lived experience of homelessness or living experience of homelessness, and we center all of the decisions that we make around their voices. The other guiding principle is choice. Many people return to homelessness because the choices they have in housing and the wraparounds are not adequate or adapted to their needs. We also want to make sure that health and well-being is there for everyone, so that, again, they feel they belong and they are thriving in their community so that they are able to stay housed, stable, and not return to homelessness. And we also align the community plan with the current strategies at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels. We also work in one of the guiding principles is the decolonizing lens and evidence-based and data-driven and bias towards action in all the impact areas. And finally, the impact areas that our community agreed to for this community plan are prevention, data, and housing. Many a time when we showcase the three impact areas, people ask, well, where is health? Because it's not specifically identified, but it is under the umbrella of housing. In order for people to be stably housed, they need to have the well-being and the healthcare and all of the other underpinnings that make them stabilized. So that's where our community decided it should be housed. So health is housed under housing. We developed the community plan. Why am I doing this wrong? Towards you? Okay, I'm going to try your way. The idea of functional zero homelessness is not ours. It became, it's part of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. They have a very inspiring vision of Built for Zero, and this has been achieved in communities in our country. So from London, Ontario to St. John, Newfoundland, etc. So we figured that we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We could just copy what has been done in other municipalities in our country and other areas in our country and bring it to our region. Yes. We also agreed that this community plan was going to be used to develop a roadmap for systemic change. Many a time, we see a lot of effort being put towards homelessness and significant resources, yet things are not changing. In fact, they're getting worse by some of the metrics that we have. So we thought, we have been thinking, and this is part of what we've been doing as a community, is developing this roadmap that it's about systemic change. So that means at all levels of and orders of government, community, not-for-profits, even developers, business, everyone is involved to make sure that the system is changing to arrive at functional zero homelessness. We also chose, I won't read all of these, but I will just highlight a few of the things that are critical to the community plan. And one of the most critical pieces of the community plan is that we're putting a very heavy emphasis on prevention. And prevention not only before people experience homelessness, but also prevention pieces while they're experiencing homelessness and even once they've exited homelessness. So prevention has become kind of the battle cry for arriving at functional zero homelessness by 2030. The community plan in a nutshell is what you see there. You have it in the presentation. I won't repeat what I said, but as you see, we talk about prevention upstream, midstream, downstream, the use of data and evidence to guide all the efforts, and working towards the goal of housing for all people as a human right and in a person-centric approach. So if you ever want to refer to what the community plan is, this is the slide for you and for our community. Here are the three impact areas that I was referring to before. And with that, I'm going to ask Michelle to come up and talk about our objectives.
Unlike Sylvia, I use scripted notes, so don't look at me while I'm doing this, please. Backwards. So the following 6 outcome areas, together with the areas of focus across each of the 3 pillars, prevention, data, and housing, were co-created with community through a series of community consultations. The first outcome area focuses on poverty reduction and has 5 different areas of focus. These are basic universal income, overhaul of the social assistance programs centering on income that allows individuals to afford housing and the necessary expenses, adequacy of rental supplements, accessibility to health supports and interventions, and initiatives to support personal purpose and growth so that individuals thrive rather than just survive, as so many of us are doing right now. Information on each of these 3 pillars is provided for each area of focus. And also just a quick note, when we talk about data, our conversations need to include information on how we address data governance, data use, and ethical and appropriate methods of collecting data. I am super concerned with not collecting information just for the sake of collecting information, which is not the purpose of this community plan. The second outcome looks at person-centered areas of focus. These areas of focus are coordination of government and community supports, providing professional development for sector and sector-adjacent workers, providing work opportunities for peers, and providing appropriate adaptive programs, supports, services, and housing for everyone. The placement, wow, I have no idea what that was. Anyhow, sorry, I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, I put something in there that I didn't mean to. Anyhow, when we talk about the coordination of government and community supports, that means that everything at the municipal, provincial, federal levels aligns, including Belonging in BC and the Housing First and Reaching Home initiatives that are currently in place. As well as with outcomes 1 and 2, there are multiple areas. The third outcome 3 is a chosen and safe shelter for everyone. As with outcomes 1 and 2, there are multiple areas of focus across the 3 pillars for the third outcome. These areas of focus are methods to address sheltering rough, specifically contracting on self-led sanctioned encampments, housing supply, including the elimination of evictions and design of housing, ensuring weather-related sheltering is available, and the coordination of our outreach efforts. Right now, we are experiencing huge difficulty with ensuring that the weather-related sheltering is available for more than 30 beds across the across Greater Victoria, which is way too few for people experiencing homelessness, partly a funding thing. So centering on funding for housing is also something that we were looking at. There are 3 areas of focus here: the provision of adequate operating resources. A lot of times, not enough money to ensure that we have adequate frontline and support workers in each of the different housing locations or services and supports locations. That is definitely a necessity. Provision of funding for maintenance, repairs, and upgrades to existing housing stock, and having adequate capital investments to buy or build housing. While many here may not be building or buying housing, with appropriate housing affordability data, we all can collectively advocate on behalf of community to ensure this happens. The 5th outcome is concerned with housing type and stock. There are 3 areas of focus for this outcome. One is complex care housing, which includes rehabilitation, recovery, dry housing as part of complex care or transition housing. A lot of times there are not enough dry facilities out there, especially for women and gender diverse people fleeing violence. That is an issue. A lot of the facilities are not dry for them, and they may need dry facilities. As well, transitional housing, which provides temporary housing and is an intermediate step between emergency crisis shelters and permanent housing, providing a safe and secure environment, and transition housing, which are safe, temporary, and 24/7 sheltered, staffed housing that is primarily for women fleeing violence and includes safe houses for women. As a note, person-centered design may also be referred to as human-centered design, so those two terms are interchangeable. When we talk about transition housing, I will tell you right now, in the capital region, as far as our housing systems inventory is almost complete, there are only 3 units, emergency units for women fleeing violence, and they are always full. Outcome 6, our final outcome, is housing services and supports. Outcome 6 areas of focus are preventions of inflows into homelessness, prevention of returns to homelessness, addressing chronic homelessness, eviction prevention, and coordination of outreach across homelessness adjacent health and government sectors. So across the board. When we talk about homelessness serving sector adjacent organizations, we are talking about organizations that are maybe focused on youth for prevention. They're not necessarily centered in homelessness, but they do provide prevention, different prevention types of supports. Things like Bridges for Women, which provides a way for women to re-enter the workforce after experiencing violence. And what was the other? I will skip the other one that I can't remember right now. So the Alliance has presented the community plan at the January 28th Downtown Service Providers meeting this year, further engaging all of the community through in the downtown core, through an exercise that provided information on the alignment of strategic plans and actions currently happening right now in community to the outcome areas of focus. We had this wonderful event where everybody looked at every single outcome in every area of focus and thought about what their organization was doing that aligns with the community plan that we've been socializing for the last year. Got a lot of information that we're collating and putting together. And tomorrow, I think maybe 1 or 2 of you might be coming, but we are doing this again with a sector-wide approach. So everybody in community has been invited. It's from 9 to 4. So I'm guessing that if you, 9 to 12, it's only a half a day. I'm guessing that if you are still interested in coming, you can just let us know before we buzz off tonight, because it really is going through this whole plan again and making sure that strategic areas in your community, in your specific municipality or city or township, are aligned with what everybody has identified so far. With that said, I am going to sit down and let Sylvia take the over.
Thank you, Michelle. And this is basically how what Michelle was just talking about, how we align with Functional Zero at all of the intersections of the work between government, not-for-profit, developers, business, etc. I'm going to, am I going backwards? No. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for having us today and for allowing us to present to you. We look forward to continuing our collaboration and our information exchange with your mayor and with anybody here. And if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Sylvia and Michelle. Council, do you have any questions? I have a question. Sylvia and I have talked about it amongst us. Prevention is such a hard thing to quantify. We know that it has innate value, but how are we going to quantify it? I can see how with the homelessness count from year to year, that can be used as quantifiable data to measure outcomes. But can you speak to the prevention piece, because it's such an integral part of the strategic plan?
It is such an integral part, and I think part of the reason why the Alliance is going to be focusing more on the prevention piece is because our service providers, members, and that are delivering programs, etc., as you said, it's more easily quantifiable. How many people did we house? How many people left our housing? Where did they go, etc.? So that's more easily quantifiable. And amongst ourselves, we say there is no money in prevention because of that, right? I mean, much of the focus is oriented to count how many people are out there, how many people are housed, etc. So by picking up the prevention piece and being able to support it with the data collection and the research that we do, there are methods of quantifying prevention initiatives that yield results, and we're going to be employing those. But that's why the Alliance, with its core funding, is able to take that pressure off of the community while they continue to deliver the services and programs. Okay.
Councillor Gray.
Thanks, through the chair. I just wondered, as you're describing the alliance, is the province involved, or is it simply the municipalities and the groups that are working on it? I imagine our place would be part of the group.
Every order of government is involved, from the federal government through the Reaching Home program. We are a member of the Community Advisory Board for Reaching Home Funding, which is a federal program to arrive at homelessness, functional zero homelessness. The province is very involved with us. We advocate to the Ministry of Housing. We work very collaboratively with BC Housing, with Island Health, and with other health authorities. And we work and have representation from the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, our Health and Housing Steering Committee, as well as the Ministry of Children and Family Development. So we bring those ministries together, as well as Treasury, to make sure that they're hearing the message from community, and that we also align our strategies to the initiatives that they have on the go.
Councillor Gray, go ahead.
And I guess the second question was, I mean, we're aware of the situation, obviously, and the difficulties that people find themselves in. And then we hear in the news about like a sudden event or something's going on that's more difficult than other. And are you involved in those acute situations, or the Alliance is more involved in the general planning and trying to look forward?
We are more in the planning and advocacy and communications piece. The Alliance during COVID actually lent its hand in service delivery, and our community and our membership was very clear that that is not the role of the Alliance, and that we needed to continue stewarding the community plan and ensuring that we are the advocacy and the backbone organization for the community. So unless we are called by our community to go back into service provision, we won't initiate that ourselves.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council, have you got another question?
Sure, I just wanted to ask Mayor Little, are you there at the CRD?
Yes.
Or there at
Yes,
Joseph, or both?
the CRD appointed me last year, at middle of the year of last year. And so it wasn't an appointment that came through our office, it was a CRD appointment. They have appointments from certain municipalities, and the West Shore representative was open, and they wanted a body to fill it, so I said yes.
Thanks for being there.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Councillor Epp?
Yeah, I just wondered, in the area of prevention, like, could you just maybe give like one example, whether it's a fictitious person or whatever, of somebody that might be the type of person that might end up homeless or whatever problem they have, and what exactly prevention would look like for an actual individual?
So the majority of individuals who experience homelessness for the first time as a youth, they're a youth of between the ages of 16 and 22, and there are insufficient programs that are in place for those youth to not get into trouble, not end up in situations that are preventable. And if I can give you an example, the focus is further upstream than youth. We are working with MCFD and with organizations that are in family and children support, because there are indicators, right, of early stages of potential homelessness if families are not supported with their housing, their food requirements, their children's therapy, whatever it is that they need. And we work with the Federation of Social and Community Social Services of BC to ensure that we are connecting with their members to create those intersections for the prevention piece. So we don't deliver it ourselves, but we make sure that we congregate with those individuals and we convene them. And those are the programs that they are instituting through the funding, be it MCFT or social development and poverty reduction, or other ministries that are specifically geared to making sure that there's family unity, that families have homes, that families have the supports they need to stay housed, that they have the health services that they need for the child, etc. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? No. If not, I'll say thank you to both of you. You're most welcome to stay until 10 o'clock. But
We may stay for the next presentation, but because we have such a early event tomorrow, we're going
Okay.
to be heading out. Thank you so much for having us here today.
thank you. Thank you very much. With that, our next presentation is by Mr. Neil West from the Metchosin Invasive Species Cooperative, or MISC. This is about invasive plant removal in Metchosin. So this is by Neil and Brenda West. Oh, well, I thought, oh yeah, okay. You're clicking, okay, thanks Brenda.
I can't multitask. So Neil West, 4491 Leafield Road. If I rush through this, I think I'll get it done. So, as you can see, 2019 is the Deputy Ecosystem Restoration, so it's the nice. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not doing that? Okay. In 2018, PTAS passed a unanimous resolution to eradicate holly from district parks. We began work shortly thereafter, averaging approximately 8 volunteers per poll. We now have a list of 43 volunteers and sometimes get 25 volunteers to a poll. So we covered an awful lot of ground with 8 volunteers. From the outset, we set out to educate ourselves and had site visits with several local experts. All are supportive of our efforts and methods, including the use of a cut stump herbicide treatment. So in 2019, we received a $20,000 grant from the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation, of which $10,000 still remains. Recently, 3 MISC members applied for another HCTF grant to produce education materials around managing invasives. We apply for funding from the HCTF annually. Each application involves a detailed list of supplies and services we wish to fund, as well as a list of target invasive species and to which of these species we expect to apply herbicide. 3 of those applications include a request for herbicide-related purchases. All have been approved. Each application goes through a rigorous review process. I asked the HCTF's Amy Perkins to give me an overview of the HCTF's review process. All applications are reviewed by both HCTF bio staff and a review committee that includes reps from the province, BC Wildlife Federation, and BC Nature. Each project is assessed and given a point score based on application questions. Reviewer recommendations go to the HCTF Board Stewardship Committee for final review and funding approval. This is a list of governments, NGOs, and other local experts that we've spoken to and gotten advice from and have given us strong support for our efforts, including for our use of herbicide. A few days ago, I received this email and graphic from Professor Nancy Shackelford, Chair of UVic's Department of Restoration of Natural Systems. Yesterday, I received this email from longtime MEASC member and environmental advocate Bill Cave. Hi, Neil. I want to commend you for your responsible use of Garlon herbicide by ensuring that it is only used as a last resort and by applying the herbicide with a dauber on a cut stem. The comparison with those agencies who are treating invasives but using spray applications is most impressive. If your method is widely adopted by other organizations who are currently spraying the invasives, I believe your efforts could result in massive reductions of the use of Garlon for the control of invasive plant species. Keep up the good work. Bill Cave. MISC does not spray. If there's only one thing you take away from this presentation, I hope it's this chart. This is a comparison of how much Garlon MISC used per acre in District of Metchosin Parks compared to the median, not the maximum, the median, and there was quite a gap, amount of Garlon recommended per acre by 3 major U.S. universities to remove invasives and to clear roadsides. So universities, not herbicide manufacturers. In Metchosin Parks, 99% of the holly in 230 acres were pulled by hand or with puller bears, thousands of stems. We kept track of the herbicide used. We used less than 1/4 of a teaspoon of herbicide per acre to treat the larger remaining trees because there weren't that many. To date, MISC has manually removed more than 10,000 rooted holly from 25 acres of Matheson Lake Park, by far the most heavily infested area of the park, and we have begun to work in Woody's Lagoon and East Soup Parks. General information regarding invasives. BC Ministry of Environment. Nearly every type of old-growth Douglas fir forest on British Columbia's dry coastal plain is now rare or endangered. The understory plants of these forests are also in danger of being overshadowed, not by natural competitors, but by invasive non-native plants, which Andy McKinnon will tell you is vital to the trees, the large tree, the Douglas firs, those plants. Freed from the predators and competitors of their homelands, these plants invade forests and outcompete the native vegetation: English ivy, Scotch broom, Himalayan blackberry, English holly, Daphne. Effects invasive plants have on insect populations, which in turn, of course, affects birds, fish, etc., 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 the tree of life thing. Native plants are best for our native birds. Through millions of years, birds have prospered with the native plants that provided them with the right foods and habitats throughout their life cycles. A study found that chickadees were unable to raise young successfully on properties with mostly non-native plants, which didn't provide the insects they needed for their nestlings. Insects don't have the digestive enzymes to feed on introduced plants, with which they have not evolved. 96% of North American land birds depend on insects to feed their young. In the study, chickadees often didn't nest at all or had fewer nestlings. A third of nestlings were less likely to survive. They require 70% native plants. Hedgerows with invasive plants had, as you'll find along creeks, hedgerows with invasive plants had 91% fewer caterpillars than those with native plants. Examples: Forsythia hosts a single caterpillar species, native willow 456. Weigela supports 2, native 9-bark 41. Cotoneaster supports 3, native dogwood 118. Holly crowds out native species and monopolizes groundwater. So this is one you guys know is near and dear to my heart. Increases sulfur on average 15%, produces persistent organic matter, and decreases pH significantly, which I believe is causing the dead zones we're seeing. Berries are poisonous to people, particularly children, pets, livestock, but not birds. Tolerates full sun to deep shade. Females begin producing berries at 15 years. Can survive past 250 years. One tree can produce 120,000 seeds a season. Therefore, one holly can produce well over 20 million seeds over the course of its lifetime. As mentioned, this is the good news. As mentioned, it takes approximately 15 years for a female holly to produce berries. Using a reciprocating saw and dauber, which I've done many dozens of times now, we can cut down and treat the vast majority of trees too large to pull in under 2 minutes, eliminating a potential 20 million future seeds over the lifetime of a single berry-producing holly. MISC can easily remove 50 berry-producing holly in one day, potentially eliminating 5 million seeds per year and 1 billion seeds over the lifetime of those 50 trees. Holly, as well as Daphne, have a relatively short seed bank, not like broom, which is about 50 years. Most germination with holly and Daphne occurs within a year. After 3 years, seed banks are depleted by 80 to 90%, so it's going to be a lot easier to get under control. Tansy ragwort. In 1998, MISC founding member, current MISC executive member, and PTAS member Kathy Atherton began work to bring attention to Metchosen's significant tansy ragwort problem. Tansy ragwort can sicken or even kill cattle, horses, some goats, pets, and people. The highest risk is after the plants have been cut or mixed in with hay, because the plants are not as bitter but just as toxic. MISC was formed in 2019, and that summer we joined forces with Kathy in her efforts. The summer of 2024 was the first summer since Kathy started the work that the tansy problem did not justify organizing a large group pull. From this point on, keeping tansy in check should be much less time-consuming. Tropic of the day, I think, blackberry, propagates via root pieces and where the tips of first-year canes touch the ground, can arise from underground runners that persist up to 1 meter deep and over 10 meters long. Thickets of blackberries can produce 7,000 to 13,000 seeds per square meter that remain viable for several years. Blackberry offers limited food, limited nesting sites, and wildlife cover. It's poorer quality than native shrubs and results in decreased biodiversity, and is often associated with a statistically significant reduction in bird species. Blackberry provides nectar and pollen for bees. However, the bloom period does not overlap with the foraging periods of all pollinators. In restored areas in Metro Vancouver regional parks, pollinators were 30% more abundant compared to non-restored areas, mostly dominated by Himalayan blackberry. When blackberry outcompetes native vegetation in riparian areas, flooding and erosion potential often increases because of the lack of deep-rooted native shrubs. Blackberry cannot provide the necessary shade for stream water or contribute large woody debris compared to stream sites with diverse native vegetation. In 2016, various Metro Vancouver groups spent nearly $350,000 on Himalayan blackberry control efforts, which does not include control costs for private landowners across the region, volunteer weed pull hours, or costs associated with education and awareness activities. If we are going to do our best to stop the spread of blackberry in Metchosin, I notice I didn't say eradicate, I said stop the spread, particularly in our parks, I believe our cut stem treatment will be necessary. However, to date, MISC has not treated a single blackberry stem in Metchosin. So next, So again, MISC doesn't spray. I usually have to tell these people this at least 6 times because, oh yeah, but when you spray herbicides, we don't spray. In District of Chosen Parks, approximately 99% of the holly were removed manually. Less than 1% were removed using a cut stump treatment. So in conclusion, we're pleased to report that after years of tough negotiating and the support of MISC founding and current executive members, Mayor Little and Councillor Shukin, we are making significant progress with the CRD and hope to be working in multiple CRD parks in the not too distant future. Clearly, we've made great progress with Chosen to date, primarily because we've had a supportive PTAS council and staff, as well as the support of several ecosystem restoration experts who have shared their knowledge and expertise with us, including our licensed herbicide applicator who has a degree in horticulture science majoring in urban ecosystems. We've only used a very small amount of herbicide and only where necessary. The more I do this work, the more I'm convinced it needs to be done and we can do it. All we ask is that you allow us to continue our work. So thank you, and we're always looking for new members. That's it. I think that was under 10 minutes.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for your work. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. West? Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Through you, Mr. West, thank you very much for your presentation and your earlier presentation too, because I think you were here a few months ago talking about holly. Might have been a year ago.
Yeah, it was a while back. I just saw the resolutions and thought it was a good time to update you.
So a question though, I think part of the reason why you're here is because you've approached the district to talk about working on our boulevards or road rights of way. And I believe that you're trying to get clarity on what MISC can do and what staff will do. Or
to clarify that, you guys passed a resolution over a year ago to say that you were going to work with us on boulevards.
Yeah.
I was under the understanding we were going to do it, but then I found out the meeting in November, that you guys have got 2 guys licensed. So I'm trying to get clarity. We've got the funding. I've talked to HCTF about funding that work, and they've encouraged us. Like they actually said to me, if you got some other project you want to start, well, you can apply for funding. So they seem to be they told us they were very, very supportive of what we're doing. So I feel strongly it has to be done. Otherwise, we've been kind of wasting our time for the last 5 years because, like I said, one tree. One of the things you got to remember in Metchosin, there's a private property on Taylor Road. Brendan and I, we got asked if we'd help get rid of these holly that are on it. And it's an old, similar to Doug Bruce's place, very old house. And it had holly, I'm not kidding you, this big. And it took Brendan and I to pick it up. It was so awkward. It was at Metchosin Day. We brought it to Metchosin Day. So the holly we have in Metchosin, when I say I can cut down a tree and prevent 20 million seeds, I'm talking about a tree that might be this big. But it's going to be, it's going to keep going, is what I'm trying to say. So the main reason, one of the things that's really frustrating in the invasive species thing is when you talk to people and they say, yeah, well, it's probably not that bad. No, it's not. That's why you want to get rid of it now. You don't have to be too swift to realize it's going to get that bad. So it makes sense to do it now. Like it's imperative you do it now. In the time we've been negotiating with the CRD, there's trees I could have pulled 5 years ago. I haven't got a hope in hell of pulling now. So the only way we're going to get rid of them is with herbicide, and not a very small amount. Sorry, that was.
And Councillor Shukin, do you have another question?
Yeah, just a follow up. As Mayor Little, as I look at Mr. West's and MISC's presentation, as I think about the discussions that we've had over the last few weeks, the one thing that strikes me, it would be interesting to get Mr. Payette's views on this as well, is that we do not have clear direction on what our priorities are in terms of invasive species, and all due respect to the motions that we'll be considering further. We don't have clear direction in terms of the use of herbicides. While we agree, I think, on two very key points, that we have a problem in Metchosin with invasive species, and the best way of tackling it, first of all, is bending our backs and using the little machines that we have. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Where we're missing things is, I think, on partly around the use of chemical. And what again, I'd like to talk about this a little further. I think one of the things that we should look at is not so much a bylaw right now, but a policy reflecting how we deal with invasives on municipal land and also on our road right-of-ways, to give Mr. Payette clarity, to give Ms. Blake, to give MISC and all the volunteers that we have clarity as well. So I would welcome an opportunity to talk further about that
Yeah.
once we get to
Let's
that.
talk about that when we talk about the other issues later on this evening. Go
Can I
ahead.
just, that quarter teaspoon, I don't see any reason why that's gonna change dramatically anywhere we work in the shows. If we had to go clean up all that holly on Sea Bluff Trail, you're gonna go through a hell of a lot more than a quarter teaspoon an acre, okay? But there's nothing, that's a real one-off. Like along your boulevards, there's one here, there's one there. And it's gonna be very similar. So, you're not gonna see a significant increase in the amount of herbicide regardless of what we're doing, whether it's trying to, I would suggest if you have a blackberry patch trying to get started over here, it makes sense to treat it. But that's my point of view, and that's up to you guys. Because of the small amount we're going to treat, and you can cut blackberry back, and well, maybe I should let Katie Nelson speak to this, but it's like a lot of plants. You cut it, it gets dead and leggy and ugly. You cut it back, and it comes back vigorous as hell. Like that's one of the ways to bring it back and make it look vigorous and get way more berries. And so cutting it isn't really management or control in the medium to long term. It is in the short term, but not the medium to long term. So just, I guess the point I'm trying to make is the number you're seeing on the top is a real number. Like Brendan and I kept track of what we were using. And that's, if those three bottom numbers, like that's a 16, well, each one of those is 16 ounces, by the way. If those numbers are acceptable to three major universities in the States, what we're doing isn't even worth measuring. Like the amount we're using is just kind of silly, I think. But, we've been doing this for a while and it works. And even though we've been using such a small amount, we're making really good headway. And if you see some of the stuff I've seen out in the bush up in the Sioux Hills, where you go 3K into the bush and there's more holly than there is Douglas fir, that's getting real scary, because that's just going to keep going and going and going. So if you're worrying about the next few generations, like I do, I've always said I want my grandkids to be able to walk in a decent park, then I think we got to do this stuff. And now I realize I'm back to holly, but I do think, that when I drive around Metchosin, I see gorse, I see broom, I see blackberry. And the good news is, if you got blackberry, you haven't got gorse or broom. So there's that good side about it. However, there's still plenty of places in Metchosin where there is no gorse, there is no broom, there is no blackberry. So it'd be nice to try and keep it out of those areas where we can. And that's what I would start with. And if that makes sense and everybody gets happy about it, well, maybe we discuss going further than that. But I've never suggested my goal is to, in the next 6 years, is to eradicate blackberry. I've never even suggested that.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, through the chair, Neil, I wonder if you could explain, I think you work in CRD parks and on private property at the moment, and then you're helping the district on boulevards with holly. So that's what you're doing right now?
Well, we haven't done anything on boulevards yet, but we're discussing it to try and get a sense of where it's going, like who's going to do it, or are we going to be allowed to do it, or
Thank you.
But we've been working in CRD parks. We're currently working, that's Marie Trays and Jay Noakes, they're on the executive. We had a meeting here about a month and a half ago, and we're working on a deal the likes of which the CRD has never done before, because they really like the work we did in Metchosin, and I'm a pain in the ass. So they've agreed to work on it, you know, so they're talking about two different deals. One where you do a typical hand pull deal, and the other is where they bring mist in to do the herbicide application. And we're working on a deal where CRD can call us and set up to work in any CRD park anywhere on the Gulf Islands, anywhere. So I think, and they know we're going to be, where necessary, we're going to be having to use herbicide on holly and at the odd time on ivy, not the typical ivy, but where you have, sometimes you get roots like this coming out of the ground of ivy. You've got this whole room full of ivy, but you got this one root where you can, I guess you could dig it out. But another thing that is important with invasives and habitat restoration, you don't want to disturb the soil too much. So you have to find the balance between, okay, and you're never going to dig something like that out entirely. You're going to be going back year after year after year. So, so yes, we've been working in Whitty's. We've been working in Matheson Roach. Like I said, we've removed 10,000 holly, 10,000 rooted holly from an area of about 25 acres in Matheson Lake. Now, it's by far the worst part of the infestation in the park, but it tells you how bad it can. There isn't even close to 10,000 native trees in that 25 acres. And the mortality rate of holly is, according to science, is pretty close to zero. So once it germinates, not much of it dies, and it just grows as thick as the hair on a dog's back. So I firmly believe, like I said, it takes 15 years to get to where it can produce berries. Well, it gives us 15 years to get it out of there before it becomes a serious problem. And every female we knock down is, see, to me, that's the problem. It's not that we have holly on the lower island. We've let it get away. Like, it's breaking out now. Like, in an area like this, you might have one big tree, but you might have 100 small ones that are only this big, which to me, as I explained to the province, they tried to tell me, oh, it broke out a long time ago. And I said, no, it doesn't make any sense. You've got all these little tiny ones that a little kid can pull. Well, that's breaking out. You know, it's really starting to go nuts. So I know Don Hare from the Invasive Species Committee, when he came down, he said, he said that the invasive movement needs a win, and I think holly could be that win. And a big part of it is the seed bank's only 3 years, maximum 3 years, and it takes 15 years to where it's producing berries. So, and like I said, I can cut down a 20-foot holly in about 2 minutes, and it's just a bingo dauber. Just put around the outside edge, and you're done. So.
Okay, Council, any other questions? Neil, I think the most poignant revelation for me was when we were invited onto the D&D lands in 2019 with James Miskelly, and he showed us a dead zone from emanating from the holly. It's not just the overcrowding, but it's how they change the microenvironment, and then the struggling Douglas firs. And there's some enormous Douglas firs there, but the ones in that immediate area were really struggling. And so I think that was the most poignant, and that's where we received most information about the cut and dab application.
Yeah, well, we're taking holly off Doug Green's place. He's got 400-year-old Douglas fir there. And if you ask Andy, he'll tell you, we don't know what holly does to below ground stuff because nobody's tested it, but we know it's killing everything above ground. So he said, this is really bad news. So anyway.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, thank you very much.
Okay.
Always a pleasure to have you here. Next on the agenda, we have 45 minutes devoted to public participation. Should you wish to speak at public participation, please include your name and your street name. As well, we have a timer there that goes green when you start talking. At 3 minutes and 30 seconds, it turns yellow, and at 4 minutes, it turns red. Okay, public participation.
Katie Nelson, 4596 William Head Road, and thank you. 4596 William Head Road, and I appreciate the work that he does, and I think it's so important. I also have dear friends because herbicide has been misused in a lot of areas and done a lot of damage. But when I look at the statistics in terms of what it takes to get a good kill with the dab, and what it takes to get a good kill if you're digging it up, or if you're using other methods, it just seems really obvious to me that this pesticide is not doing the same amount of harm that would be done if you either let the thing spread or if you dug it up. So I'll just say that. And I understand that there are a lot of people that would like to see more evidence-based things about herbicide, Garland in particular. So there was some talk with, I don't know if it was Nancy Shackelford, but anyway, said that there was a professor who would get one of their students to do some investigative work on Garland. And I would just like to sort of publicly say that if that person needs a place to do that work, I have a seasonal creek and work that might take even several years to do could be done there, or I'm sure other people would also volunteer to have that kind of study done on their property. But in the meantime, I hope that the Metchosin will continue with the use of Garland on holly, and I know I will volunteer, and I will really try to get other volunteers to do it so that it doesn't cost the district a fortune in terms of holly elimination on our boulevards. I think that would be a wonderful thing. And I think when people see it and it's right there on the boulevard in the public eye, that can really help us get more people interested in taking care of our environment and in doing a thing that helps the whole world. So I'll close on that, and I really hope that we can do this holly thing on the boulevards. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at public participation? Go ahead, Kathy. Kathy, and then Kim.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to address you. Kathy Atherton, 4995 Levon Road. After that presentation on homelessness by the Housing Alliance, it does feel somewhat frivolous to be presenting on basis right now, but we all have our obsessions, and this, like Neil, has been mine. So thank you, Neil, for a very passionate presentation. I just want to say I support Neil's comments. NISC has a proven track record of controlling invasives by mechanical means, using herbicides as a last resort. And although manual removal is my first line of defense, I did get my assistant pesticide applicator certificate to assist in this endeavor. My husband always said, "You can drink Roundup." Now, I never ascribed to that, and I hate using anything like that, but this was coming from a forestry background. You can drink Roundup. I will dispute that to my dying day. However, I hope that the Metchosin environmental what's the next letter? Advisory Select Committee will continue to support the judicious use of herbicides as a last resort. Another point that I really wanted to make was that every district on Vancouver Island has different problematic invasives. You know, they're not all the same. So I hope that the CRISP rankings will not be the only criteria on how we prioritize managing our specific invasive issues. For instance, you don't find a lot of tansy ragwort down around Beacon Hill Park. And I know they have a ton of ivy, but there again, you're not going to find the proliferation of blackberries that we have here as well. So just look at things specifically also through our Metchosin lens when you're prioritizing which invasives you want to be tackling and how we go about doing it. So thank you. Thank you.
Kim.
try not to ramble. My name's Kim Hill. Address is 1070 Brookview Drive. Thanks for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Appreciate that. And just before yeah, okay. All right. Before I get into the main body of the main matter that I'm here about, it's just I noticed that Ms. Leduc has got a letter in your agenda tonight. I'm familiar with that, and it deals, of course, with the pros and cons of using poison as a means of controlling invasive species. I urge you to. You'll see it's extremely well researched. It's important, and I urge you to take heed of the wisdom that she's setting forth in that letter. I think it's you'll find it evident from what in her usual fashion as she does. It's intelligence that should be heeded. Okay, now the main reason I'm here tonight is it's really awkward because it involves my immediate neighborhood. We've been dealing with the situation there. Our CEO knows quite a bit about it. So does your building inspector. So does the CRD bylaw officer, Vancouver Island Health authorities. It's been one thing after another with one particular property. Happens to be immediately adjacent to ours.
Before you, since this is a bylaw matter, if you
It
could
is
not identify,
multiple matters
please don't identify any
No,
individuals or places.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's just, okay, well, I guess I cat out of the bag by saying it. Well, it could be one of three different neighbors. Anyways, it's in our neighborhood, and I'm not here just on my own behalf. The neighborhood is right pissed about this. It's not getting any better, despite all the stern letters that have been sent. The situation is actually getting worse rather than better, and we are wondering if is loving the tolerance that we've chosen and the sweetness that they show, but it's not working in this instance. As a matter of fact, it seems to be backfiring. It's not just the fire department knows about this. So does the police. It's a problem situation, and we've grown out of patience on that. One of our neighbors, when I was speaking to him over the weekend about this, also wanted me to point out to you guys, we've been warning you about the situation there for a very long time. If something even more serious happens, like if somebody gets harmed there, if there's already been a major fire, if there's the place is whatever. It's an instance that involves many more people than the property was designed to house. Okay, it's a compounding situation, but it's beyond us now. It's way above our pay scale. We're just a small street. We put up with the snow removal being done by one of our neighbors with the snowplow. Well, we're the last on the line to get the power restored. We don't mind that. We can handle that. But this is enough. It's enough. Collectively paying $50,000 a year on this. I think we deserve a little bit of attention. We haven't asked for much over the years. Okay. And
Thank you.
thank you in advance.
Good evening, Nicole Shukin, Le Bon Road resident. I just want to return to Neil West's presentation and just speak to how much labor I've seen Neil and Brenda and MISC members do over the years when it comes to like manually pulling broom, holly, blackberry. I've just never seen a group of people do more manual work. And so I get it when Neil says, there's only so much that you can do as a small group of people in a district with only so much manpower or human power. And as a last resort, you know, you need to sometimes use Garland. And I just think if we had unlimited, you know, human bodies willing to troll the parks and the ditches and pick the way these guys have, that would be one thing, but we don't. And so I also support the very discriminate use of Garland when necessary. I also just wanted to pull out some of the quotes. Like, it's too bad that this slides were so small, because there were some awesome like quotes in the PowerPoint presentation. Quotes from like Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. A quote from Napoleon Hill. Procrastination is the bad habit of putting off until the day after tomorrow what should have been done the day before yesterday. And then a quote by Ovid. If you, I scribbled it down, I can't even read it, but there was a great quote by Ovid as well that pertained to just like not procrastinating, like getting on the problem. And that's what I also took from Neil's presentation, is that the longer, you know, we have kind of fuzzy instructions for staff, or staff doesn't know how, you know, municipal grounds can be dealt with. You know, Holly has a chance to become endemic when it could in fact be dealt with promptly. And so I think the 4 resolutions that you passed earlier, or that you approved earlier, are before you today. And I just wonder if those resolutions might be baked into a clearer policy quickly that actually gave crystal clear, you know, instructions to staff so that action can happen now. One of the problems of referring issues, you know, invasive species issues back to MEASC is just that temporal lag. Like, council will send it back, it'll take 3 months potentially before MEASC looks at it. They may even refer it out to another body if there's not expertise on MEASC, then it will come back to council. Like, a year could pass before an invasive species issue is actually dealt with. So I guess I'm just kind of trying to urge the temporal importance, the temporal urgency of getting a good policy in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to? Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank the council administration for appearing to fix the microphones. I guess the one concern is, where's the proper placement? Maybe we need one of those dog cones here that we kind of stick our head in and speak. But anyways, that's it's good to see. See, there you go. Is that better? Yeah. Okay, the one thing I wanted to speak to, and this is in line with the budget process, there are a number of existing initiatives and future initiatives that are being contemplated by council that will potentially have a significant impact on the taxes for residents of Metchosin, not only for 2025, but for a number of years into the future. And you know, the Flesh Road Bridge, that is something that's on the table. I've gone out to that site with an individual that's very knowledgeable about it, and it would make sense that there be a thorough understanding of what the costs are, either to maintain or remove, and again, what the cost would be to put in the Fortis gas line if that bridge is in fact removed. We've got the Weirs Beach bridge again. There appears to be some issues with that is going to require some additional spend to remediate. There's a number of other initiatives. The fire hall, that's currently being looked at as to what is going to happen there. The school, a number of initiatives being considered for that location. I know Mayor Little is working with other districts on this 9/11 initiative as well, the police service. So I guess just with that in mind, I just feel it's going to be an interesting few years to determine how council ultimately makes decisions with all of these demands for capital and hopefully keep taxes within a reasonable level. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary Lamb from Saddleback.
Patty Whitehouse, Rocky Point Road. Just want to acknowledge the dramatic improvement in the sound and thank whoever is responsible for it. It makes a real difference.
Thank you to Ms. Hanson and Ms. Miller for working with our service providers to get it just right. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Avril Yoakum, Windfall Road. Thank you, Neil. My battle is 40 feet high, the tree. Working on it. The school, I would like some clarification, as there are some rumors out there that the West Shore Parks and Rec are not paying rent. And before the rumors, get too far spread, maybe you could enlighten me and those above who are listening. What is the deal with West Shore on their fitness programs? Are they paying rent? If not, why not? And for how long? Okay, let me just... Okay, do you need an email or is that all clear? Okay. Thank you.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have the special council meetings from February 6th on page 11.
Move adoption, please.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have receipt of the minutes. Councillor Epp, we have the committee of the whole meeting from February 10th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then Councillor Donaldson, we have the special finance committee meeting, budget meeting from February 11th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that. And lastly, no, that's fine. And then moving along to the mayor's report, just briefly on each item. Ecom 911. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this. You can read it, but we've the West Shore and the other mayors of the South Island have continued their advocacy. We've held a press conference on the legislative grounds. Subsequent to that, we had a meeting with Minister Begg. We've written letters now back to Minister Begg and to Premier Eby. And so we're continuing our advocacy towards equitable treatment of the South Island districts, municipalities regarding the Econ. That's Econ. Yeah.
Can I ask, reading the newspaper, the pushback from the province seems to be that we adopted a system and so therefore we're responsible for it. What's going on in the other parts of the province? Are they not adopting systems like ECOM, or why are we?
I think-
That's the part I've been.
I
I'm
think
not
what the province
understanding.
means is that they did have a conversation with the 10 South Island in 2021, saying that this is coming down the pipeline. So what they are saying is that we've had sufficient notice, but we didn't know how much it was going to be. We didn't know what the parameters were going to be. We didn't know that it was only going to be the South Island. And the province has committed to a governance review, but the governance review, I think, is separate to the funding structure. And it is significant for Metchosin. Remind me again, CFO Creek, is it 134,000?
Through the chair. For this year, we're looking at 106.
106. That's for an abbreviated year.
Correct. Just
Yeah.
to 3/4.
Okay. But for municipalities such as Langford, it's in the millions of dollars. And so it's significant for all of us, and we're trying that advocacy piece. But don't forget, we have a new minister, so it's going to take him some time to get on board and become acquainted with all of the files. But I do think that they heard us loud and clear at the legislative grounds. CAO Payette and I were there, but also at the press conference, or at the subsequent meeting that was called by Minister Begg.
Is there any hope for the cell phone levy that Councillor Shupin's been talking about, or is it because the province is all done differently everywhere? It's just not a.
Well,
something that
we've
could come?
suggested that. They've said it's complex, and we agree it's complex, but other provinces have done it. So, yeah, I think we'll continue with our polite and gracious engagement with the province on that one. Okay, so good news, the CRD and Shiano First Nations signed a water agreement. They've been working towards this for some time. A ceremony was held at Beecher Bay on January 27th to celebrate the signing of the agreement. Many of the executive of the CRD were there. The chair of the Regional Water Supply Commission, Gord Baird, was there, as well as Chief Choops and members of their council and members of their youth. So it was a great day for a celebration. Just
on that point, just to say that I think everybody may not know, this whole agreement is to right a wrong. The Shannon Nation have been paying more money than they're supposed to have been paying for years now. So this fix-up is a really important changeover for all of us.
And they're very appreciative of that. And one of the comments was, this is what reconciliation is about. So it's reconciliation. It really is significant for the nation, and I was pleased to participate in that. Moving on to the CRD Foodlands Access AAP and bylaw. At the meeting of September 11th, the CRD board gave third reading to the bylaw 4602 Foodlands Access Service Establishment Bylaw number 1, 2024. The bylaw authorizes an annual maximum requisition amount of $1 million to establish a new regional service for the purpose of coordinating and preservation and access to farmland and agricultural use. In saying that, the annual requisition was up to $1 million. Not very much has been spent. I think 200,000 is foreseen to be spent in the next year. So that was, it passed the AAP alternate approval process. There were only 29 valid responses in opposition to the adoption of the AAP. That's when it went forward. The CRD is also created a draft strategic plan for the regional water supply. They are asking for comments from the public regarding this strategic plan, and this is looking to the future, how to manage the water supply, how to maintain and safeguard dependable, safe water supply. And so the draft strategic plan, there's a link within this document, as well as a link to the feedback survey. So we'd appreciate it if you would fill in the survey, but there's also going to be an information session on March 6th. And then regarding USA tariffs on Canada, this is a personal plea. Given the unprecedented and continued threats of tariffs imposed on Canadian goods by the United States President, a simple call is emerging on this side of the border to buy Canadian. Farms in Metchosin and throughout the CRD offer a range of vegetables, fruit, and meat. These products are grown at small-scale farms where the owners and the operators are deeply invested in the care of the land and the soil and in providing valuable food in our region. They offer delicious and nutritious alternatives to the big plastic tub of US-grown pale lettuce. At a time when we have to think about food sovereignty by supporting our national economy, we can not only buy Canadian, we can also buy locally and sustainably. So I encourage everybody to drop by our farm stands and support our local farmers and producers. Okay, and then I have another late item. This is concerning accessibility in Metchosin, and I'm going to read this. The Accessible BC Act was enacted in 2022 regarding organizations including 2 municipalities. The ask was, or the mandate was, to establish an accessibility committee, develop an accessibility plan, and establish a public feedback mechanism to receive comments from the community to the organization regarding accessibility issues. The District of Metchosin is a member now of the Capital West Accessibility Advisory Committee, along with the City of Colwood, Township of Esquimalt, District of Highland, City of Langford, District of Sooke, and the Town of View Royal. Over the past year, the member municipalities have worked on meeting the requirements of the Provincial Act, and most have approved their individual accessibility plans. The Capital West Accessibility Advisory Group, or Committee, has now moved from the corporate officers to a citizens-appointed committee, and Council has appointed Janie Finnerty as Metchosin's representative. The citizen-appointed committee held an orientation session this last week. So they're well on their way to becoming a citizens activated committee. Accessibility and meeting the requirements of the Accessibility BC Act is the responsibility of the district as a whole. It cannot be the responsibility of the portfolio of one member of council or one specific committee. It's all of our responsibilities. Our organization must apply an accessibility lens to everything we do in our day-to-day operations in order to identify and remove barriers to individuals interacting with in or with the municipality. We will consider accessibility while developing our policies, our procedures, our plans, access to our facilities and physical spaces, community engagement, and service delivery, to name a few. In working towards becoming a more barrier-free community by implementing goals identified in the district's accessibility plan, costs for implementing projects will be considered at the annual budget planning process. My request is that members of the public who have experienced barriers with or while interacting with the district facilities, we encourage you to use our public feedback tool by emailing accessibility@metchosin.ca. So that's our portal, which was one of the requirements from the province in the BC Accessibility Act. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for indulging me. Let's move now past the mayor's report to business arising on page 31. We have the recommendations from the Committee of the Whole, February 10th, 2025. Yep, Councillor Schaefer.
I want to pick up on a discussion point that I had raised earlier and share an idea if I could, and I think may have some impact on the 4 motions that are before us here.
Okay.
If I'm allowed to do that.
Yep.
So-
just to intervene for a second, shouldn't we move the motions and talk about them as we go through, or what's the?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to share an idea if we could. I believe it might have some impact on these motions.
Okay.
So, thank you. So over the last few weeks, we've seen a fair degree of divisiveness and confusion over matters that should actually engender cohesion and unity in this community, namely that invasive plant plants are a big problem, in many parts of Metchosin, and we need to work toward their control or minimizing them or their outright removal. And that our first choice is that we bend our backs and employ machines to deal with invasives. So those 2 points I think everyone agrees on. However, disagreements are emerging around chemical treatment, particularly on municipal lands and roadsides. What strikes me is that we need a clear policy on how the district deals with invasives, and within that clarity on the use of herbicides. What I would propose is that we develop a policy around invasives, not just in the use of herbicides, but that should be part of it. And that we not only are informed in this by our CEO and staff, but also the policy should be informed by vital participants in the community's ongoing battle against invasives. So namely that is MISC, but also the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association. And MIASC, of course, has provided some great insights in recent times. I think they should be part of policy. What I'd like to do is put myself forward to work with staff and these organizations and others as needed to draft a policy regarding invasives, including the use of herbicides. And I'd like to provide a motion toward that action. Now, policy, key thing about it is it provides direction to staff about, or in this case, it will be providing direction to staff in terms of municipal lands. So it's not a bylaw. Bylaw applies to much broader scope, individuals and private properties potentially. So I don't believe we should go there right at this point anyways, and we talked about that a few weeks ago. Now, as I look at the 4 motions before us, I am concerned that they don't provide any specificity to staff in terms of how to action invasive plants, especially in light of a group who's willing to help us out, and in light of the potential of getting some of these species under control, or at least addressing them. I'm sorry, I'm not being. If I could make the motion, maybe see if there's a seconder, and we could see if.
Just a sec. Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'm open to any ideas, but maybe we just back up a moment, because there's a suggestion that there's problems out there and that these motions don't deal with the issues that are at hand. So we have at the moment a District of Metchosin policy, and it's quite clear. We don't use herbicides or pesticides for cosmetic purposes, and we're interested in reducing the use of pesticides or herbicides everywhere in the district. On public property, I think we know what we're doing, or sorry, that's on private property, then we're just encouraging that people don't use them. And I think you're saying the idea would be about our properties. On the CRD property, they have their own policies and everything, what they're dealing with, and MISC is working very well with the CRD, and we hear they're expanding and everything, so there's no worries there as far as I'm aware. The issue that we have in front of us in terms of the Hawley treatment is all being done. Nobody's challenged that, and none of this changes any of that. None of the 4 motions change anything that's going on today. The one thing that may be an issue would be the permission that council gave previously to allow or to ask or request MISC to work with our public works staff through the CAO to work on boulevards. I don't believe that's a policy issue here, but we could ask our CEO to clarify what the issues are, because I'm not aware of any. I don't think MIASC is aware of any either. So, so for me, there's not, if there's a problem to approach, great, but I'm not sure there's any issue that we're actually confronting that's a problem. I appreciated the presentation today by Neil West and all the work that MISC has done. And they're working the CRD parks and doing a great job. They're working private property and doing a great job. The question is whether or not they're removing holly from the boulevards and what the holdup is. We could ask what that is and then perhaps deal with that. So then what the motions here that have arisen relate to, we're part of a big program. We could countermand our CAO and say we don't want our own staff using the herbicides. And we'll go back to our previous arrangement, which I think is, if I got it right, about $700 a year to the CRD to do that work for us, and it's quite controlled, and there's perhaps no need for our staff to be involved. NIST continues doing its work. We're not really affecting their work at all. And that again, NIST is available if things come up. And then as regards blackberry, it seemed to be confused, or I'm not sure I got the point across, but what this motion says is that control means that we'll be eradicating blackberry in parks and in sensitive ecosystems wherever we can, and then everywhere else we knock it down if we want to or not, but we're not going to focus on it. So most of that work, that's what low priority means, and focus on control. That means you eradicate it in parks and sensitive ecosystems, but elsewhere we're not going to worry about it. As a district workforce. Well, those are in summary, that's what's there. I'm in your hands. Oh, I'll just mention, Kathy Atherton mentioned drinking glyphosate, or her dad or somebody recommending it. EcoJustice just got a decision out of the federal courts in February of this year, ruling that I guess it's Health Canada has to go back because their approval of using glyphosate was unreasonable and did not assess the science of the potential risks. So the feds have 6 months to decide where glyphosate will remain on the market. It's one of the ones that is persistent in the ecosystem. The other thing that I guess is true, and we've got some correspondence here from a couple of people. You see, what we're kind of got this idea there's some kind of a problem. I'm not really clear what the problem is. I think we're appreciating the work that MISC has done doing DAB applications, which means very little herbicides are used. And what's the concern we've heard about is excess herbicide use. So we're not really, there's no clash that I'm aware of, particularly having talked to a variety of people about it.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Councillor Gray has identified a number of reasons why I think a policy is necessary. First of all, the policy on not using pesticides for cosmetic purposes, as I read that, it gives almost no clear direction. It encourages minimal use of pesticides for cosmetic purposes, but as I understand it, recall, it does not disallow it. And the rest of the policy is incredibly vague. I think we need to look at sharpening up that definition. In terms of these 4 resolutions and how they apply to playgrounds, to parks, that I don't see that in here at all. So again, a policy would help sharpen our focus areas in terms of invasive removal, and also where we may consider using pesticides almost as a last resort. Mr. West had mentioned that as well. I think that is a general agreement as a last resort. But also addressing matters like the use of volunteers as well. Again, that's something I believe a policy can handle. So I have to confess that we spent almost an hour, I think, discussing these 4 motions at the last committee of the whole. And I came away the next day confused as to what we had actually achieved by this discussion. What practicality would result from these motions? Other than, I mean, the staff member being able to join the CRIS meetings. That's great. A person should be able to do that. But on a practical basis, I'm just not sure what this has achieved, particularly in light of the problem that we have, and also the concern about the use of herbicides. And again, I don't want to get too nerdy in terms of the bureaucracy of putting a policy in place. But what it does is it does give guidance to staff, and particularly in a case where there's community values at stake as well. And those are as yet in some ways unsettled. So, and I go and I think about I'm sorry, I will stop in a sec. The different perspectives that MISC seems to have and also the the Bilson Creek Watershed Association, and actually probably everyone at this table has picked invasives for both of those organizations. So it's really good that we try and harmonize those two perspectives.
Before you go, Councillor Gray, does anybody else at the table want to weigh in or? No? Okay, Councillor Gray.
I'll just say staff aren't using herbicides at the moment. So you're wanting a policy that would have them using herbicides.
Not necessarily.
So they don't use herbicides at the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's no confusion on that.
If I may, there is confusion because MISC is asking for guidance. They're wanting to have guidance from the CAO, but there's not a clear policy. The 2001 policy speaks to the reduction, the gradual reduction of pesticides and herbicides, but it doesn't provide guidance and for the criteria and the framework for making decisions. For that reason, and for giving our citizens and our staff guidelines, I like the idea of Councillor Shukin working on a policy with staff and liaising with these different organizations to give a framework. And many of these questions would be answered as well. I also came away from that meeting thinking, we spent an hour discussing this, and at the end you said, I don't know if blackberry is a problem. And I'm thinking, goodness gracious, we've got so many other things to deal with when we're dealing with something that may or may not be a problem. So I think we can take one step even back, park some of these resolutions, take a step back, develop a policy, a revised policy with staff, with the boots on the ground, so to speak.
Sure.
I think it would be very valuable.
Perhaps we could take a minute here from our CEO. I believe there are issues that arise that don't have to do with the actual question of the herbicide or not. There's a different issue that we're facing, I heard, with regards to volunteers and staff working together, unrelated to all this. And the policy, I don't think, would resolve that question, which is the question, because there is nobody that I'm aware of asking MISC to not do the work they're doing today. So the issue really is the one about the staff working with the volunteers, clearing the holly from our roadways. So that's where the hitch is, if there is one. Maybe we can hear from our CEO just to explain what the issues are and why we haven't proceeded on that path. I don't think it relates to a policy per se.
Okay, so
With the chair.
So what you're asking, did you hear that? Sometimes you can't hear that. Okay, could you respond, CEO Payette?
Thanks, through the chair. Don't really want to speak about staff issues in the public, as I'm sure well aware, but the way I understand the debate is, and I agree that a policy with regards to the use of pesticide and herbicide for the municipality would be valuable because there is debate in the community on the benefits and not benefits of both. So to get through that confusion for staff is if council signed off on a policy for use or not, that would be very valuable as we proceed towards what Councillor Gray's talking about, which is contracting out or using volunteers to support that policy. So the way to clarify, if we had a policy on use, that would be fantastic. And I would not mix that with availability of volunteers on public or district property or not. That's a separate topic. As you know, we're a unionized workforce, and district property is union work, and the union has first right of refusal. And barring that or staffing availability, then we would look at working with a contractor. And of course, we have volunteers in our committees that we cherish and we support and appreciate. And we have a mechanism with insurance to utilize volunteers in a supervised way. And so I believe that we can manage that process adequately if we had a strong policy on the use of herbicide and pesticide to guide us. Make sense?
Thank you. Now, also, within that policy, it also makes sense to speak to what we're trying to do is the invasive species. Because in the policy that we have now, it speaks to herbicides, pesticides, I think, not herbicides, pesticides, in the context of invasive species overall. It doesn't define them, it doesn't lay out what invasive species we are concerned about, and I think that would be valuable in a policy to, I mean, what problem are we trying to address? So go ahead, you give me that eye, so go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
I hear Mr. Payette's views on pesticide and a policy around that, but I think the only focus that, or the only application of a pesticide that I can think of would be concerning invasives. Like, I don't think anyone's dreaming that we're going to kill, I don't know, whatever it is. I hear Mr. Payette's views, or sorry, direction in terms of the role volunteers may or may not play in this, so I get that point. I would still, and I still believe that there's value in clarifying what staff would do in terms of like prioritization of the invasives that they would deal with. So if I could, I would move the following. That Councillor Shukin be tasked with developing a draft policy concerning the management of invasive species on municipal land and roadsides, and that the draft policy cover matters such as prioritization criteria, the role of public works, the use of herbicides, and other matters of importance. So that's where the pesticides come in, and it's not finished yet. And that engagement occur with staff, MEASC, community groups such as MISC, Bilston Watershed Habitat Association, and others in the development of the policy, the draft policy, and that this draft policy be brought to a future committee of the whole for further consideration. So moved. So just in, okay, sorry.
So this is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Do you have more?
Sorry, really briefly, it's that a draft policy be developed, focused on invasive species and the elements that flow through it, that there's engagement with staff, MEASC, MISC, Bilston, and others, and then it come back to a committee of the whole meeting for review.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the justice.
Wish to speak to this?
I just wanted to say that as this has come to my attention in the last 24 hours from some residents, and I appreciate all the presentations this evening, especially from MISC and the amount of work they've done through the years, and I learn something every time I hear these people and understand more and more. It prompted me to actually look at another municipality that has done great work on this sort of thing. However, they have a bylaw, but in looking at their website, and I've always remind myself that as we did with the dog working group, that we can adapt from other people's work. And Saanich has a great pesticide bylaw. Not only that, they have great resources there that support their residents in a way of educating, so that they understand, you know, what pesticides are, herbicides, how to apply them, not apply them. In their case, it is a bylaw. You do have to have a permit and those sorts of things. So that's much further reaching than what you're suggesting, but it's certainly something to be aware of. And as Mr. West had said, the least amount is what we're using, and seeing great effects with just on holly, and I'm sure with other things too. So it's the understanding of these things. So I think, yeah, we need to update that policy and continue to learn more, including my colleague here may have to say about blackberries.
And just a point of clarification, would this policy also include pesticides? Pesticides, I think of herbicides and pesticides differently. Herbicides for plants, invasive plants, pesticides for pests that are interfering with plants. So also it could include, I imagine, a pesticide would be for rodent control. It is an invasive species as well. Would that include that? And I don't know if that's captured anywhere else.
My suggestion is focused on what do you call it, botanical invasives, recognizing that we do have a problem with bullfrogs from time to time. But yeah, it's just plants. So herbicide, you're right, would be the focus.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just for clarity, so is the motion about municipal lands only? Or are we talking about the municipality in terms of the current policy does talk to private land as well, but I'm just asking.
I think the current policy encourages private landowners. Is that
Correct.
the language? It encourages.
Yeah. The focus would be on municipal lands as well as roadsides, boulevards, as they've been referred to.
So not including CRD parks?
It would not be. Not I'm thinking right now.
And not private lands, but let's, if I might say, let's not remove the encouragement of reducing the use of herbicides on private lands. So if the policy people working on it could consider that as, take a look at the existing policy and then see what you could continue to use, I would be happy with that. It would be, I think, beneficial to us if the work to be done would discuss staff roles, including CRISP. You know, what's our relationship to CRISP, so that we're clear how this all pulled together. As I explained before, there's a certain way that it works today, and because the CO decided to train up people, it disrupted the issue of like a council member being on CRISP and things. So that might well fade away with a new policy. And then the other thing I would ask is if we could, the concerns that I'm hearing about are the evidence of the use of the herbicides. I haven't heard much complaining about Garland particularly, but obviously glyphosate's in the news. We know that these products are not well regulated in some people's view. So the issue, when you go through the herbicides, if you would think about persistence in the environment, aquifer protection, and the whole applicator licensing part, like who don't tend to work near riparian areas and things like that. That would be great, and then I'll vote in favor of the motion if you have considered those things.
Absolutely, and your point is well taken earlier that it didn't seem to me like staff were using herbicides. So however they've been trained, and are we poised to change that approach? So that's part of the reason for policy clarity.
Yeah, my notion was to get them involved, or rather from me asked, the notion was get them involved so that they're aware of how this all works, and ourselves not being so much involved in operations. But I think that if we did consider, and then the update, so if you list a herbicide in your policy, which I expect you'll have a list of herbicides that you're going to want us to approve, if you could give us a schedule of when those would be reviewed. I think we probably, I don't know if people remember the Biotest Laboratory scandal where they were shredding all the documents. Most of our herbicides and pesticides and many of our household products were tested by biostate laboratories in the United States. So things like Toradon used by BC Hydro, the validity of the testing on those products when they were licensed was all fraudulent. So there's a lot of trouble in the herbicide regulation part of it. So I think that's the sensitivity that people have. And now it's up about, Canada was just found the other day having done unreasonable approval of a pesticide or herbicide that has now been linked with lymphoma and other health effects.
Okay. Councillor Epp.
Just a point about staff that really, what the public works staff does or doesn't do is really the responsibility of the CAO. I think if any conferring should be with him. I don't think that we should be, even the motion about CRISP and stuff, I think that's not really our job. So just a point I want to make.
Sorry, the policy, isn't a board policy then to set up what staff, the whole issue here was what staff don't know what to do. So if we don't talk about what the staff are going to do, the policy won't have any meaning. Could I just get clarity? I'm asking that we be clear about what the direction, or sorry, the mover of the motion is asking me to be clear what staff will do. And the CRISP notion is that I'm attending CRISP, but if the notion is that the council's not ready, it seems like, to agree that we should, be part of that. And it was actually, while Councillor Schukinger is saying it's obvious they should be part of the public works staff, that was actually controversial. We spent a lot of time on that at the last meeting and did not get a unanimous vote. So it actually wasn't really that much appreciated by everybody at the table, although you may have voted for it. So these issues about staffing need to be do need to be sorted out, because they're the ones who will be doing the application of pesticides. So you're giving direction to staff through the policy.
What Councillor F brings up is valid. The responsibility of council is to set policies, bylaws, guidelines for the staff and the CAO to follow. So we want to provide that framework. I don't think that they can provide that policy without mentioning staff, but this is not going to be done in a silo. This is going to be done in collaboration with the CAO. So let me move to the CAO, and then we'll go back to Councillor Schukin.
Thanks, Chair. The goal of the staff, my staff, would be to pull away from the reliance on CRD as a contractor. We'd like to move away from that and have staff be able to do that function in-house, just to be clear. And I believe that being associated with CRISP would help with that education process for our staff. So I'm okay with that. My other point is I wanted to thank Neil actually for the past, has it been a year? Been a few months working with Neil. Neil coming in and talking with staff and educating, which is kind of what we're doing here collectively. So throughout this process of policy development, I would like to know if council is comfortable with continuing with the resolution that we can continue to work with Neil on the Holly issue with staff. So if we can continue to work with that, that would be great.
Okay, council.
I'm super comfortable, except we just need clarity on where the use of pesticide might take place and on what terms. And I think we all have to be on the same page on that. And again, I respect that, Mr. Payette directs staff, but on this question, we have to balance, some community interests and divergent views. So.
But you've also given us the assurance that you'll move forward in a speedy fashion, that this is not going to be protracted.
No, yeah. That my goal will be to get it done as soon as possible. And key person, of course, to connect with is Mr. Payette for sure. So, yeah.
Can we just make clear? So that's on hold then? Is that what I'm hearing? The MISC work with Public Works is on hold until we have the clarity from the policy. Is that what I heard? Makes sense.
I think that is probably what does make sense, and that's part of the driver for this is to get us all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, council. How do you feel about that? What's your appetite? Comfort, Councillor Donaldson.
Well, I'd like to see, I do agree with the policy, but I would like to see the CAF continue to work with MISC, just because, I think things have been uncertain for a while. So I think that should continue while this policy is being developed.
I would agree with that. And I think the collaborative effort is important to be working with the CAO on this for direction.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
The motion was put forward, is my understanding, because of the confusion and what would the Public Works people do unless we gave them direction. And so my colleague has said we'll get that all organized. So it seems like we're saying we need to do an investigation and all that to avoid confusion, because there's confusion, and now we're saying it's totally clear. So I think we should pick one or the other. Leave MISC to work with our crew, or do what Councillor Schukin suggested, which I'm happy to vote in favor.
Councillor Schukin.
Very little. I mean, there might be a happy medium except in the case of the use of pesticides. I mean, if there's places where, holly can be picked from boulevards, great. But it's, again, I think we need to be all on the same page in terms of herbicide use. Mayor Little, I wonder if we can deal with the policy matter, and even if we decide to circle back on this other question.
I think we're still dealing with this.
Okay.
Councillor Epp, you have your microphone on. Did you want to? No. Yep. I think we should take a step back, develop a policy. It'll be done in a timely fashion, and then proceed with moving forth with executing the policy. That doesn't prohibit MIST from having discussions with the CAO, because, like Neil said, the majority of what MIST does is pulling, is manual extrication of holly. And so I would support the motion to develop a clearer policy. Okay, everybody's exhausted by this topic, so let's deal with this motion. Does anybody need the motion read out again? We all clear? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. And then the question about the CAO, continuing discussions with MIST, that's a motion I'll put forward. Yeah, second by Councillor Shukin.
Just for clarity, I'm understanding there won't be use of herbicides until the policy is completed and approved by council. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. So now we have the motions that are before us. My suggestion is to park these motions unless there's something on there that you think Councillor Gray won't be addressed by the new policy.
No, I'm good with the decision of the council as a whole.
Okay. In B of that, from the committee of the whole, did you want to move that?
Sure, I move that council direct staff to investigate applying local government riparian area regulations in Metchosin enacted through environmental development permit areas plus zoning.
This is moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. Comment. Councillor Gray.
We went through this at the council of the whole, and I wonder if there's any questions anybody has about the motion or any clarity that they're missing.
Sir Shukin.
One of the things that dawned on me at the last meeting is how complicated this was, and at the risk of repeating myself, there's a lot of work here. I think Councillor Gray, though, characterized it well by saying, the first thing you do in a long journey is take that first step. So this is the first step. The key thing for me in terms of me supporting this was the staff will investigate applying the regulations. So it's not like, I think the discussion that we had was simply to flesh it out a little bit, not begin to actually do the work. So do the actual specific work on this. So.
Okay. Does anybody else wish to comment on this? Councillor Gray?
Well, yes, that's the point, just to give us the guidance of what would need to be done to make this happen. Quantify it.
See no other comments. I'm going to call. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just some clarity with the part that says environmental development permit areas plus zoning. So is that a proposal to create a whole new zone called an ETPA? And is that across the district, or is it specific zones, or what exactly is that?
Sure. So this was taken from the Green Bylaws Toolkit and the materials circulated for the committee of the whole. So environmental development permit area, as the mayor I think properly conveyed, would probably end up in our OCP at some future time. And that's one thing. So that lays out the areas and saying this is what we are going to do about protecting these particular features of the landscape. For example, 30 meters on either side of our streams. The zoning bylaw then would also, in the zoning bylaw, so additionally, you turn to the zoning bylaw and you say, oh, in this zone it's protected, and this zone is protected, and through all the zones. So it's just two ways of protecting. As we heard at the subdivision seminar the other day, the approving officer has abilities to pay attention to the OCP, but not necessarily follow it precisely. Whereas the zoning bylaw is something that the approving officer is required to follow. Then we also learned that the development permit areas are something that we're required to look at. So the idea is to capture it in several places in our legislative framework as coming from the UVic Environmental Law Group. So, but then our OCP is different than other ones, and so the notion is our staff would look at this and say, okay, our suggestions, this is how we tackle it, and then come back and let us know what is a big job, a small job, what's involved.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Donaldson, I see you thinking. I'll ask a question while you formulate your question. So what I'm what I'm concerned about is that there's many riparian areas throughout Metchosin, even in the uplands area, which the OCP says are very sensitive, outcropped areas. They do contain riparian zones, but not all over. So would this require mapping of all of Metchosin and the different riparian areas based on topographical maps, satellite images? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, my understanding is the answer is no. In other words, these areas can be defined in the development permit area, and then you can go and see whether or not the particular location it is one that's been described. So we don't need to map them all, and that's the simplicity. That's why we're looking at this very simple way of approaching it. It's the least effort for everybody. It's the least expensive for the developer, least expensive for the district. It's the easy way to go. And so one sets it up without all the mapping. Some of the other choices, then you have to map the entire, every stream that you're going to involve in it. But again, we'll leave that to the experts to come and listen.
So the first option would be, we would be under the understanding that we would be at risk of missing some riparian zones.
Not, if you're going to map every one, you might miss one. So instead of doing that, you're saying they're all included, and then when you hit upon one, you say, well, is this by definition a riparian area? And if it is, then it's covered.
You mean if a development application comes through, or a subdivision application, or a building permit, that kind of thing?
Yes.
I see. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Does anybody else have any comments regarding this motion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Donaldson opposed. And then the last one regarding the Province of BC Coastal Marine Strategy.
So I move that Council endorse a resolution in support of BC legislating its coastal marine strategy for the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Conference and the Union of BC Municipalities Conference.
This is moved by Councillor Gray, second by Councillor Donaldson. Anyone want to speak to this? We spoke at the Committee of the Whole.
We did, and so we had previously applauded the province for the work they were doing developing the strategy. The strategy has now been adopted with a variety of themes, which include a healthy coast, resilience to climate change, thriving coastal economies and communities, and informed governance. And then one of the important parts of the coastal strategy is that a legislative framework does not exist, and the notion is with a robust toolkit, including a legislative framework, things get moving. And so the resolution here is really to support that legal side of things, so we can see a coastal marine strategy that will meet its goals. And we're joining the districts of Saanich and Langford in this.
Okay, this has been first and seconded. I will call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
let's move along to reports for action. On page 33, we have a request for a development variance permit at 4764 Cardsview Terrace. We discussed this briefly. Could I pump this over to Councillor Shukin?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think it was last Tuesday, we did a site visit at the Garrison residence and saw the location that they were planning on for their accessory building, a 20 by 22 foot accessory building. We saw the rock wall that they want to remain in place, and thus they wanted the front yard setback moving one side of the building to 6.3 meters and the other side to 6.9, which would be contrary to the zoning standard of 7.5 meters. I didn't see any issues. I think the discussion that we had with the resident at the time didn't raise any concerns for us. And so with that, I would move that the district issue development variance permit 2501 for the recommendation outlined in our planner's report, and this be done for in respect of 4764 Cardsview Terrace.
Second that.
This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. Just before you, do you want anything to add anything to the first?
Nope.
No?
Just thank the residents for having us there. So.
Did you want to motivate being the seconder? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it was probably the quickest site visit. Was very well laid out, well presented. It's very minor variance, and I think that's, you know, they've considered everything. They've considered, like you say, the rock wall, the retaining wall. It's got a significant purpose, saving the trees best that they can. Yeah, they've worked well with staff, I believe, on this, and it appears to be very practical.
Okay. Councillor Gray? No. Councillor Epp? No. Okay. Yeah, I agree. It was very straightforward, and that's the beauty of the site visits. It was very difficult on the paper to figure out what they were talking about with the rock wall, but seeing it was truly believing, and I thank the applicant for their willingness to show and answer all of our questions. Okay, so are we ready to call the question on option number 1? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving along to page 47. This is a report to council from our Chief Financial Officer, Jeffrey Creek. This is regarding a TD Friends of the Environment Foundation grant application. This is for fencing. I don't know, did you want to speak to the issue, CFO Creek? Thank you.
Through the chair. There we go. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So again, this is just a grant that the Metchosin Growing Society is applying for, thanks to Councillor Donaldson. It's for about $3,500. Be used to help build a fence over there. Council had previously given support to the community garden group back in 2023. Unfortunately, they are not registered as a charity or a society or apply for the grant. So the money we can apply on their behalf as a municipality. We'll get the money, we'll pass it on along to them. They'll complete the grant application and reporting, and it goes pretty smoothly. Any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Gray.
I'm just interested to know, do we have a license of occupation for this property with the Metchosin Growing Society?
Through the chair. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe Councillor Donaldson would have a better idea on what the property is.
Can you speak to this, Councillor Donaldson?
I can. We have initial resolution, as you'll recall, two actually, but one in particular that suggests that the spot be a pilot project. The group is well organized now that the staff, as we speak, is preparing the license of occupation.
Okay, Great. Councillor Epp.
Yeah, actually, it was a question for Councillor Donaldson through. Anyway, yeah, I just, well, one thing about the grant application I was a bit concerned about is, and I think it's great, but is the anticipated outcomes, the numbers of people that you have listed in the grant, say 20 to 30 Indigenous participants and 15 to 20 LGBTQ plus people and others. I just wondered where those figures came from.
This grant has actually been quite a learning curve for me, because so as you put the information in, certain things are populated. So when I was reviewing this, seeing it in the agenda package, I also was questioning, why were those so inflated, pie in the sky? I don't have an accurate answer for you. It would be great if we could achieve that amount, but I don't actually have the accurate answer for that question.
I mean, I know it's not a huge amount of money, so they probably won't. But I know when you have to do grant reporting and stuff, sometimes it could get a little dicey if you can't, you know, keep up with what you've said in the application.
Correct.
The other thing was just to request that maybe we could have a few more updates on kind of what is going on with the, you know, with the gardens, so we can sort of all be a part of what you're doing over there.
Sure. And the only reason there haven't been because we haven't done anything since November. Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Gray.
So a question through the chair to Mr. Creek. As I'm looking at the information we've got in the package, it looks pretty clear, this email of January 16th. It says that the group will not proceed with an application if the group is not a charity. So as far as I can see, they can't apply for the grant. Then it goes on to say, if a municipality is applying, please, you know, send us a new email. So maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but if we apply, we're not applying on behalf of somebody else. We're applying for the grant, not the other group. And then I fall to the question that Councillor Epps raised, which is I think some of these targets or outcomes are going to be very difficult to complete and also very difficult to measure. So I'm not really, I kind of feel like I don't mind putting a grant application from the district saying we'd like to put a fence in. And then when the fence is completed, we'll have a community garden, we'll proceed, but not much else. So first question, I think it's a municipality has to apply not on behalf of somebody else. Our application for our property, for our fence.
Mr. Creek.
Through the chair. So yeah, we don't get to say the district of Metchosin on behalf of the Growing Society, but it would be the district of Metchosin applying, receiving the funding, and providing it to the Metchosin Growing Society. They'd be performing all the work. It wouldn't be our staff and stuff on the fence or anything like that.
But we own the fence when it's done. It's our property, our fence.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
So then if we're applying for it, then that's okay by me. I think it gets a bit confusing when we have a councillor who's a member of the organization and all of that. And I guess I would just like it to be cleaned up. So if we're putting in an application, it's quite clear the purpose and that we're not making commitments about diversity or whatever else might be proposed by the Garden Society, who are a different group than ourselves. We won't be managing it or running it.
Yeah, just to clarity, I am actually not a member of the society. I'm actually the council liaison for agriculture, and this is part of what was in the agricultural plan. My name is on it because I said to them I would help them with their documentation. And I have been shepherding them along. They've gotten out and gotten their own insurance, their own bank accounts. They've organized themselves, and I'm filling in the blanks as I consult with them. So no, I'm not a part of their executive whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay, council, shall we vote on this to support the grant application of $3,500? All in favor?
Well, point of order. I'm just sorry. I just want to get clarity about whether or not the council is suggesting that there would be 15 to 22 SLGBTQ plus individuals, and then whether we'd be surveying and asking people questions about their sexuality and things in order to complete what's written in the documents here. I'm finding that I just don't see how we would do that. And so I want to clarify that before we vote.
I think that was an error. That's something that came up. It popped up in the application that can be changed before the application is sent in. Would that not be the case, Mr. Creek?
Through the chair, I would have to defer to Donaldson.
Councillor Donaldson, could we not go back into the application and change that from 25 to 30 to unknown?
No, I don't believe that we can do that at this time, but what I can say as far as privacy goes, that information, from what I have seen of the group, there is nothing on their application that actually even asks what their orientation is. The application for the grant was more about how diverse, there's diversity categories, there was demographics, what sorts of, are you turning anybody away? And I have to say it was probably one of the more difficult questions because the group themselves, including myself, everyone is welcome, all ages and abilities, and this application definitely dissected it in much finer details. So to answer both my colleagues, how will we know the numbers? I guess if we ask each and every one of them, and if we had to report back, we would have to be clear that we've not reached those goals. And certainly in the first year, we certainly will not reach those goals. I'm not sure at what point we would. But these are questions that are asked on a lot of applications now.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
So I'm totally supportive of all ages, abilities, sexualities, people with disabilities, older people, people in low to moderate income, all the things that are mentioned here. I just can't see the district putting forward a document suggesting that that's what we're about here. We're actually just putting a fence around a community garden, and we hope that it flourishes and many people enjoy themselves there. So that's my anxiety, is just, I'm happy to apply to the TD Bank, but with more of a official District of Metchosin application.
Okay. I think what they're getting at is diversity. They want to see diversity. I doubt whether they really care whether there's 24 or 23 or 20 participants with an orientation as specified. I know it says that. I'm just extrapolating that I think they want to encourage diversity. So with that, I think is the intent, I would be willing to support the grant application. Does anybody else wish to speak to this?
So you mean not changing the wording, leaving it as it is? I guess
what I've been told is we can't change the wording. So you either support it with the wording or you don't support it.
Okay, because I think for me, I guess I'll just offer that I feel like, especially sitting at this table, if we're going to commit to do something, then we should be prepared to do it. If we're not able to do it, then we shouldn't commit to. So it's unfortunate because it would have me voting against this particular proposal, which I happen to be very much looking forward to seeing the community garden there.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Epp.
Thank you. So what this is that Mr. Creek has put forward here is this application was completed not by the district. It came from the Metchosin Grown Society garden group. It actually registers Metchosin Grown Society, technically. And when it was sent in, the response they got back was that, do you have a CNR number or a CRA number? And they don't. So who does have that is the district. And so what Mr. Creek has said here is that that money will come to the district because they have, they are registered. The response to that email did go back saying, no, the group doesn't have that, they're brand new. However, this is the property that they're on. The property belongs to the district. The activity belongs to the group, and what the address was, and they were fine with that. So with the idea that the district, as Mr. Creek has mentioned, the money comes to the district, when it arrives here, then it goes to the Machosen Grown Society bank account. That's how it's passed through, if I'm correct. Yes, Mr. Creek, thank you.
Councillor Shukin?
Councillor Rapp, I think was.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Rapp, sorry about that.
Yeah, I guess seeing as how Machosen is applying for this grant, I guess I don't quite understand why it can't be amended. Because it is in fact like a new grant application coming from the district rather than the Machosen Grown Society. So it seems I do support it, but I do tend to agree with Councillor Gray that I think if it's coming from the district in Machosen, then that it should actually be vetted by staff. I know when we put in for the grant for the lights at Hans Helgeson, I brought it in so Mr. Creek could have a look at it and give his comments. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not necessary, but it does bother me a little bit too that there's some kind of wording in here that doesn't come from the district.
Just let me clarify with CFO Creek. Do we have the application? If we have the application, can we change it? Is it changeable?
Through the chair, from as far as I understand, we cannot change this. The application has been submitted. Might be able to send them an email back and say we need to rectify a few identified items on it, but the application has been submitted in that regard. So we could contact them through the email that they've left us and see if we can say, hey, point 10 and point 12 need to be changed to these numbers. That would be my best guess.
So could we submit the application with an addendum letter saying points 2, 10, and 11 or whatever it is, say we cannot commit to this for reasons of practicality and for privacy concerns?
Through the chair, absolutely. We'd send them an addendum for it, whether they accept or not.
Yeah, that's what I would propose. Would that be okay, Councillor Donaldson?
You could probably do that, but the deadline has come and gone. I don't sure how hard and fast that would be, if they'd accept it or not.
Well, so has this already gone in? Yep. Okay. Okay, so it's a moot point whether we accept this or deny it, right?
All this was put together in Mr. Creek's report, as he has stated, is the money comes through the district because the group doesn't have a CRA number, and then that money would go to the group, and that was okay with the TD group.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure what to suggest here. We're dealing with a nominal amount of money, except for it's a lot of money for fencing that we don't have at the district that they will definitely need to be successful as a community garden. The application has already gone in. The question is, perhaps the motion could be that the council approve that if the grant application is funded in the amount of $3,500, it will be used for the fencing at the community garden. How about that?
That's what it says, right?
No, it says it approves the TD Environment Foundation grant application. If it's already gone in, we don't need to approve it. Okay, so if I may, I'm going to put forward a motion that should the TD Friends and Environment Foundation grant application be awarded, that the monies be used for fencing at the community garden.
Second that.
This is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Discussion. Yeah, Councillor Gray.
So we just don't do any, we need not send a submission ourselves into that.
It's already been submitted.
So it's just if the money arrives.
It's just that if the money comes in, we earmark it for the fencing. Okay, compromise. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed or for? Oh, that's unanimous. Okay, good. Let's continue. Does anybody need a 3-minute break. Let's do a 3-minute, only 3 minutes. We'll be back here in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody,
How are you doing, Tina?
Tamara's usually here, but Wendy's not. Well, just seems to be the right thing to do. I think it is. The last time I picked, there was a Bilston Watershed blackberry poem, and it was my
Okay, welcome back to the meeting of March 3rd. We're on item number 8C. This is a staff report, UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, request for council resolution. So this is a grant for the Machosen Emergency Program, seeking support for the submission of these two grant applications and authorization for the CAO and CFO to execute any agreements related to the successful application. So two grants, the Emergency Support Services Grant of $38,000 and the Emergency Operations Center Grant of $40,000. The fire chief has nicely outlined the strategic relevance of these grants and the financial implications. I'm just looking to staff. Did you want to add anything to this for our consideration? No, that's good. So, okay, Councillor Schuppen, go ahead.
Mayor Little, I would move that that both grant applications be approved, and that in both cases the mayor and CAO are authorized to execute any agreements related to successful grant applications. Right.
This is moved by Councillor Schuppen, seconded by Councillor Epp. Any other comments? Councillor Schuppen, then Councillor Epp, and Councillor Gray. No,
Okay.
no, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I wondered, I see the, I think part of the staff training is Indigenous cultural safety, and I wonder if we would be doing that with the Shannon Nation.
Oh, I suspect so, yes.
Great. And do we know the numbers in terms of the annual dinner for the ESS? I think there's, we have $1,000 in the budget to recognize the ESS every year, but we haven't been using that money, so I don't think they do have an annual dinner. And now I think there's a couple of grand associated with this for dinner. And so I just would want to make sure we set expectations that we have a grant to do that if we're successful. We don't have the money to have a big annual dinner every year otherwise.
Okay, go ahead. Councillor Donaldson?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if Councillor Epp could actually ask that, or answer that rather. The fire department I know has an annual dinner every year, and I would suspect that the ESS personnel are invited to that. Is that correct?
Sorry, I have no idea.
Okay.
I think for the first time they were invited this last year, but that came out of their Machosen Firefighter Society grant money. I don't know what will be used in the future, but I would suspect that they would adhere to the guidelines.
Okay, so as I recall, there is a line item specific for their annual banquet outside of the society. I'm sure the society does help with that as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
a line item in our budget?
There was, yes.
Okay, okay. I hadn't noted that. But last year was the first year that they had invited the Emergency Operational Center, Search and Rescue. Was there? Oh yeah, the pod leaders. Yeah, sort of all-inclusive welcoming.
Sorry, I just missed that. What was it?
What was what?
The pod leaders. I'm sorry, I just missed.
Oh, so this last year they did hold their annual banquet, and rather than including just the firefighters, they extended that invitation to the Emergency Operations Center, the Search and Rescue, and the pod leadership.
Great. Can I ask a different question then about the business? I'm wondering about, and I'm going to vote in support of this. I think it's a great idea. I'm a bit of a one-note Willie on this. I've been asking about an evacuation plan, and I believe the fire chief confirmed that through the same group, the CEPF, there are grants available for evacuation planning. And I don't know the status of that. I'm maybe mixed up about it, but I think it's something that we should get on to in relation to the question of you know, a bitumen oil spill or something like that. So I'm in support of this, but I'm just hoping the next time around we might make sure we got our evacuation plan up and running.
Perhaps we'll ask this fire chief to speak to that. And certainly she has her eyes on grants all the time, and not near one goes by that she doesn't apply for. So if there isn't a grant for emergency evacuation, I'm sure she will apply to it. Let's let her speak to that.
Yeah, it's under the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. I guess there's a section there for evacuation planning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, first by Councillor Schuch, seconded by Councillor Epp. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's unanimous. Okay, and we'll move along to the mutual and automatic aid agreement on page 71. This is mutual aid between the Capital Regional District, the District of Sooke, and the District of Metchosin. I suspect there's nothing new, but it does provide mutual aid. We also provide mutual aid to Langford, for instance, and we provide services for Shiano First Nations as well, just for your interest. So with that, I will ask for a motion. Moved by Councillor Gray, moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray.
Motion be that the council support the mutual and automatic aid agreement between the CRD, the District of Sooke, and the District of Metchosin.
And authorize the appointed bodies to execute the agreement.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Gray and Epp, or Epp and Gray.
And just to motivate us, I'm thankful that the different fire departments and authorities are working together. It's great. I guess they're learning together too. And I like the idea of keeping our community as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay, go ahead.
That's a question. So that's 4 departments, not.
No, this is just the district chosen District of Sooke and the CRD.
Okay, because
Capital
I'm
Regional
reading.
District.
Yeah, okay. Otter Point, East Sooke is what I'm reading here.
Yeah, so Otter Point would come under the Montefiore electoral area, which is a part of the CRD. So the CRD does all their signatures for all the electoral areas. Okay, I'll call that question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have next reports for information.
Mayor Little,
Yes.
I wonder if I could request or suggest that Mr. Creek's report be postponed until another day. Big reason is we've all been up since 5:02. There's more on the agenda. I think Mr. Creek has made some very important points in here, and it would be maybe good to tackle it when we're more fresh. And actually, there's more people to maybe hear Mr. Creek report on this. So, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else wish to speak to that? Would a postponement, we table this? I think the word's table. Postpone this till the next meeting. Councillor Gray?
I'm okay to do that, but would it be all right if I spoke to Mr. Creek between now and then about some of the information in the report to see if we can get a bit more clarity? I
Sure,
think
it
it would help the discussion a little bit.
Sure.
I just want to move it along rather than just leave it static.
Sure.
What I'm talking about is, you know, we've got fixed years, but some information of the other years would help us. I think we could then identify quite clearly what the cost increases were, you know, what they were related to. And then what I'm interested in, and I really appreciate the report, by the way, but it's that idea of we're projecting forward based on the past. Which things are we going to repeat and which things maybe not? So our staffing, for example, maybe we've done that, and so it may change the flavor of it a little bit. I just would like the opportunity to chat with him a bit.
Okay. Would that be agreeable to you, CFO Creek? Yeah. Okay. I think that's wise. We're all tired, and we do want the public to listen to this and give us comment as well. So let's postpone. Do we need a motion to postpone? Councillor Schuch can put forward the motion, please.
That we postpone Mr. Creek's report on future costs and taxation to another meeting.
To the next meeting.
To the next meeting.
Okay. Moved by
Second
Councillor
that.
Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that. And thank you to CFO Creek. It is a very good report. We're moving along to the West Shore Parks and Recreation Staff Report on page 95. This is a request. So they have approved funding for the Regional Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan that will evaluate the current state of parks and recreation facilities at West Shore, looking for a 10 to 20-year roadmap. The engagement phase will run until the end of April. The final work and engagement plans have been approved. Draft surveys are in their final review and are scheduled to be released, or they should have been released, I guess, by February 10th. The ask is to receive this for information. This is just an update. Would you like to add anything, Councillor Donaldson, since you're our council liaison to West Shore Parks and Recreation?
No, it's fairly comprehensive. I have reported on this in my councillor updates throughout, and we have, as it says here, we will be one of the 5 municipalities that will be having an engagement with the consultants.
Okay, thank you. I think we can take a motion to receive.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, on page 97, we have Metchosin Building Inspection Department permit revenue for January. Any comments or questions? If not, receive a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Page 99, we have the District of Metchosin Public Communication Reports statistics. So roads, trees, and branches continue to be the lead communications from the public to the district. Any comments or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion to receive for information. Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have the monthly bylaw and animal care service reports for the month of January, February. Moved by Councillor Epp to receive, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Anything else with this? Councillor Greg?
Just, I think it's actually the annual report 2023-2024. And that's okay. It's just showing us what happened last year as compared to the previous year.
2024. Okay. 2024. Thanks for that correction. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have correspondence for action. First of all, we have a letter from the Victoria Humane Society requesting property tax exemption. This would be just for the year 2026 for their recently purchased property at 3280 Woodruff Road. They outline their raison d'etre, their what their concerns are, as well as they've included their financial statements. I'm going to first turn to our CFO, Mr. Creek, to see if he has anything he wants to add to this.
Through the chair, thank you. I guess they are requesting it for 2025 in the letter. Of course, you had to apply by October 31st in order to get that into BC assessment on time. When I was speaking to this person on the phone about this, I told her she should probably apply for grant aid if she did want to get the taxes covered for 2025. When I looked at it though, their total taxes on this property, just based on the 2024 rate, would be right around $5,700, which right now would take up all of the granting aid budget. So I can put that back to council if you want to, I don't know, consider that as an option. If not, we'll put that into record for 2026 and put in a permissive tax exemption application for her, get that rolling for this year's paperwork.
Okay, that's useful information that it would be approximately $5,700. for 2026. And they, of course, are welcome to apply for the grant and aid, although, as you say, that exceeds our total amount of $5,000. Okay, Councillor Shukin. So they've missed the deadline for
Yes,
2025.
yeah.
So
So-
that's not for discussion.
Okay. So one option in terms of dealing with this letter is just move receipt.
No, we could move
Yeah.
receipt as well, but they're asking for charitable status for 2026.
Yeah, okay.
So we could receive it for information. It doesn't give them a yes or a no.
One, sorry if I can, I understand that there are discussions underway with Chosen Foundation in terms of covenanting the land that this is on. Councillor Gray and I have actually had some correspondence with members of the Machosen Foundation. They mentioned it was okay to mention this. I might suggest that whatever road we take with this group, that we encourage them to complete that process and look at some sort of covenant and actually maybe come back and provide us with information about how that discussion is going. So what we may be able to expect with a covenant is a higher level of protection of the land, and even some safeguards in terms of, well, that's what a covenant does, safeguards in terms of future use, preventing industrialization of the land or further development of the land. So I would be interesting to find a way of conveying our support for that. I'd love to have the Humane Society as a long-term neighbor and long-term involved participant, but if they're looking for an ongoing tax exemption from us, this is I think a quid pro quo, a fair exchange in terms of seeking covenant and also having them be able to rely on us kind of on an ongoing basis for the tax exemption. The one example I'll raise goes back to the Boys and Girls, sorry, I'm going to just say this, a property that was obtained by a charitable group a number of years ago, and the discussion was when they came to council that they would seek and obtain a covenant. And from that, there was tax exemptions given on a regular basis, yet no covenant was actually obtained. And then what happens, a number of years go past, and the land is put up for sale for subdivision. So again, I think that there's something we can ask the Humane Society just as they're asking us for something. So
I think also, if I may, their ask for tax exemption for that particular property wasn't only to do with the covenant, was that they wouldn't develop, which they hadn't until that point. So I think they upheld their obligations under the charitable tax donation request, I think. That's my understanding. But I do see some wisdom in allowing this to happen. Keep in mind, it's only 7-8 months away. They need to have the application for the 2026 in by November 1st. Is that right?
Through the chair, we have to have it approved before October 31st.
Okay, so they would have to have it in at the beginning of October. Councillor Epp.
I will move the district grant a property tax exemption to the Victoria Humane Society for 2026, and the Humane Society enter into discussions with the district regarding a covenant on the property.
could I?
That's moved by Councillor Epp. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second, but I might just amend it very
Okay.
briefly.
Councillor Epp, do you have any other comments? Okay, Councillor Shukin.
So I might just amend it, if I can move an amendment, that we approve the tax exemption with the encouragement that they move toward a covenant with covenanting the property and showing the district or showing council some signs of progress before October 31st. Just by way of
You have to be
explanation.
October 1st.
October 1st. So by way of explanation, the covenant would be, it would be on their title. There'd be a covenant holder, which presumably would be the Metchosin Foundation. And the district is not necessarily a party to that. So it's on land title, but it's between two different parties, as I understand. So, yeah.
So that's not really a friendly amendment unless you consider it that.
I don't agree with the amendment. I think they've just bought the property. They've got so much on their plate right now. I think we'd give them a year leeway before we make too many restrictions on what they need to do in the next few months.
Okay. And if I can just ask a question to CFO Creek, it's my understanding that tax exemptions are evaluated on a yearly basis. It's not just one or new ones, it's all of them are evaluated on a yearly basis.
Through the chair, that's correct. Every year in July.
So we're not giving them tax exemptions until in perpetuity.
Yeah. I guess the intent of the motion, and sorry, it probably was worded poorly, was to show a signs of progress toward a covenant. So that, whether it happened or not, but again.
Okay,
yeah.
that would be an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Gray, seconder. Let's talk about the amendment. So this would be granting them the 2026 tax exemption if they show movement towards developing a covenant with the Metchosin Foundation or another partner.
Mayor Lill? Sorry to interrupt. Could we have the date moved up somewhat, because we would need to bring forward a bylaw which would require first 3 readings, and then so we need about at least a month to have the bylaws adopted. So
okay.
If you could make the deadline like the end of August or something, so that we know that.
Okay, with the deadline of showing progress, end of August. Okay,
sounds good.
Sounds good. So, who wants to speak to this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to remind council that we have been talking about tax exemption for properties that maintain the natural attributes, and Miask had made a recommendation about tree canopy being a sign of that, and I am at the moment corresponding with the CFO about that and how that might work. And I expect coming out of that discussion will be a discussion about, well, what makes sense on what types of properties and that kind of thing. So just in the background, that work is underway.
So who's doing a tree count on that property?
Pardon me?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said something about a tree count.
Oh, no, tree canopy. That's something that's
tree
easily
canopy. Sorry.
measured with a mapping and things like that, just to show that the property is remaining undeveloped. But we'll come back with more information about that.
Okay. Okay, anybody else wish to speak to this? It's a little bit subjective. It's showing progress. That's what I'm worried about. If we come back to council and say, well, they've had discussions, they both parties, we could even get a letter from both parties saying that they're working towards a covenant. At that point, there's a lot of ways to solve this, but it is subjective. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Rapp opposed. Thank you. So the main motion doesn't need to be addressed because it's addressed in that motion, right? Or does it? Am I correct, Deputy Corporate Officer Hanson? So we've adopted the amendment. Do I need to go back and take a vote on the actual? I think we do.
No, the amendment was, and not the society enter into discussions with the district regarding a covenant. The amending motion was essentially the same, but adding that showing council with some signs of progress prior to the end of 2025, or sorry, August 2025.
Okay.
So
We won't need to. And with that, then that was a unanimous vote.
Okay.
Okay. And could I have a motion to go past 9:30, please? Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'm trying to hurry. Okay, so next is page 113. This is a letter from me as chair of the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice with specific asks regarding the Mobile Youth Services Team, adoption of the business case report that was commissioned. This is by a University of Athabasca and University of Victoria researcher, Rebecca Nelms, regarding the state of MIST and the 3 asks for long-term 5-year funding to support 2 full-time positions of MIST, to urgently convene local leadership across a number of different agencies, and to conduct research on MIST as a model for youth-centered wraparound support that could be replicated. I've talked about MIST a number of times at this table. If anybody doesn't remember, I can bring you that. But with that, I'd like to propose a motion that the a letter of support for the proposed plans and recommendations outlined in the policy report, Mobile Youth Services Team Critical Status Report and Recommendation, prepared by Dr. Rebecca Nelms on September 26, be sent to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice, and that the letter of support be copied to all the recipients in the correspondence. So this is just in supporting MIST and the reports that have come out, so that we can get continual sustained funding for the Mobile Youth Services Team. That's a motion.
So is this the draft letter here?
This is this was a letter to Premier Eby, but a letter would be sent to the same recipients and just say, please be advised that its meeting on March 3rd, the District of Metchosin passed the following resolution. And that was the resolution that I read out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Could I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? Concerns? Questions? Go ahead.
Well, just, I think maybe on that one, if you sign it, your signature block, Mayor of District of Metchosin, be clear it's from us.
Yes.
Because otherwise the other groups they'll write on their own.
Yes, I'll just say on behalf of council. Yeah. Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And we have to get to our bylaws. So this is the soil removal and deposit amendment bylaw number 687. Deputy Corporate Officer Hanson, could I ask you to give us an update on this recommendation?
Sure. So bylaw 687 was initially introduced to council in June 2023 and given first and second reading. The bylaw was referred back to staff to get further clarification around regulating other materials such as plastics, recycled or manufactured materials, and providing an exemption for piles of wood or wood chips. Although a municipality has the authority to regulate the removal and deposit of soil or material, it's generally the jurisdiction of the province to regulate the quality of soil or contamination. It is also important that definitions in our municipal bylaws remain consistent with the senior legislation or statutes. It's not recommended that the district add any other words described in the definition of other material. In addition to the definitions, provisions in Section A and a new Section 8A and a new Section 8B have been added under prohibitions, which prohibit the deposit of other material and wood waste, except in accordance with a new Section 10 under exemptions, which would permit which permits the deposit of wood waste consisting solely of bark mulch or wood chips used for domestic purposes, such as landscaping, or wood cut only for home heating. The recommendation for this evening is for council to amend the bylaw to include the proposed amendments, which are shown in red, and to give third reading to the bylaw as amended.
Okay, so if you turn to page 121, you'll see the red redacted information there. And do we have any comments? Does somebody want to move the recommendation? Go ahead, Councillor Epp.
I'll move that council amend the soil removal and deposit amendment bylaw number 687 by including the proposed amendments, and that council give third reading to soil removal and deposit amendment bylaw number 687 as amended.
Second.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Do you wish to motivate Councillor Epp?
No, I think it
Not at
looks
this
good.
time of night?
Really great.
Okay. Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, and just a big thanks to staff, Mr. Payette and Ms. Hanson especially for moving this along. And we've had a request from members of the Agricultural Advisory Committee to also look closer at dumping as it pertains to agricultural land, as I understand it. So we've got that in the district's machinery, legislative machinery, and it'll come back to us in time. So great to firm these amendments up and move ahead.
And it'll come back in short time.
Yeah.
And the reason why this really needs to be done is for that May 1st deadline for the time when soil removal and deposits are more common in the district. Okay, anybody wish to speak to this? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have other business. We have a notice of motion. Notice of motions only require that the council member read it in. No second is required.
Okay, so this is a notice of motion that I would like for council to consider. The council consider the merits of composing an annual council newsletter to be inserted with the 2025 property tax notice.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that notice of motion. And with that, we don't have any time for question period. So I will, unless I'm mistaken, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, staff, for staying with us tonight, and thank you to members of our public.